Hello, welcome to Revelator Alf for a radio podcast thing with a bit of a difference, I suppose. Not so much focus on the motorcycle world, however, we'll be talking about the weekend sport in action from around the world in the motorcycle categories, I suppose. But mainly I'm going to be talking about the weekend sports. So this is kind of an offshoot of what I normally feature in terms of content, but you know, it's something that I'm really interested in anyway. Sports always have been. If you watch my channel, I often mention it. But really, there's two sports I want to talk about this last weekend. Obviously, football for the UK, but also in terms of boxing. My team, West Ham United, got a great win at the weekend where we all thought we were going to lose again, but we won 4-0, so it was just a great result, but we need to keep that going. But Man United, they got into the winning ways again after they won the Carabao Cup, after beating Newcastle 2-0. It was an okay game, but it was, it was kind of, I suppose, it had its moments, but I think it was quite comfortable in the end for Man United, and yeah, they're on to winning ways. Fortunately for them, but unfortunately for everybody else. But you know, I think some of their fans are probably getting a bit carried away now, sort of saying, yeah, well, they could do win the FA Cup and win the League Cup, and win the league and win in Europe as well, because they're only in the Europa League as well. But I think that's a little bit of a stretch too far, isn't it? But anyway, so look, if you're into sports, let us know. Let us know what you're up to. Let us know what you think of the league as it is right now. How Man United are doing? How Man City, Chelsea. Another loss for them at the hands of Tottenham. Tottenham up to 4th in the league now as well. Liverpool getting a draw, an unconvincing draw, so they're just dropping points like crazy. But at the bottom, it's very, very tight. Everton lost again. So Leeds got a result just like we did. So it's all very tight. And it's going to be tight to the rest of the season. I think they're down there. But I think, I am going to be talking mostly about the boxing, I suppose. Mostly about the boxing and what happened over the weekend. Let me just get into that. So the first thing was really these two characters here, Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. They had a little boxing match in Saudi Arabia, and it was it was an interesting affair. The card was quite good. Quite a few boxers on the underside, a couple of really quick round knockouts, quick finishes. The actual undercard, or the co-main event, was a world championship fight, a cruiserweight. Which the world champion, WC world champion, lost his title, and Badou Jack won. That was a good fight. That was a really good fight. Good quality fighting as well. But the main event, I suppose, was Jake Paul, the YouTuber turned boxer, against the Tommy Fury, who's supposed to be more of a boxer, but still a novice, really. And this grabbed the attention of the world at large. Everybody was, getting all hyped about it. The media, the internet was going wild. Everybody, on the internet was saying, oh, Jake Paul's going to win, definitely going to win. And without offering any reasons why, for the most part, usual comment section nonsense, the way it goes. But then, lots of people were also favouring Tommy Fury. And I was one of those who's saying, well, no, Tommy Fury's got to win. He's got to win. There's no other way. Whilst you've got to acknowledge that a boxer like Tommy Fury is definitely a novice, you've also got to acknowledge that he's a more seasoned boxer in terms of been doing it a lot longer. His family is full of fighters, full of boxers. His brother's world champion, of course. So you would have thought that he would be a lot better than he actually is. The problem with Tommy Fury in that is he hasn't really fought enough. He's only had 8 professional fights. Now he's just beaten Jake Paul, but on a split decision. It wasn't a convincing win by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, from a spectacle, it was kind of a rough and ready, fight. They were both landing punches. They're both getting better with the jab. Both their movement wasn't that great, especially Tommy Fury in the second half of the fight. His movement just stopped. He was too static, and he kept on getting clocked by Jake Paul. Jake Paul is fundamentally, at a very low level as well. So all of a sudden, you've got two fighters, two novices, and this fight has just been made a really big thing when really it shouldn't have been made a big thing. So he gets the result and he gets the decision, and I had him to win anyway, but I was kind of surprised at how close it was. I thought that Tommy Fury would have put him away a lot sooner. And you kind of think, well, actually, even the commentators were saying, if he just did this, he just moved off his jab, if he just pivoted around, because his corner were telling him to move around the jab, circle around, circle right, go to the right, go to the left. And he wasn't doing it. He stopped doing it. And I think he got stunned a couple of times with some shots. There was a lot of talk beforehand. There was a lot of said, we're both going to knock each other out by the third round and everything. And it just goes to show that, when these boxers start, talking before the fight, it is nonsense, really, isn't it? Because nobody really knows until they actually get in the ring what anybody's going to be like. So they say, I'm going to knock him out. Well, yeah, you think you will, but thinking you will, and when you say, I know I will, no, you think you will, but you don't know until you actually get in the ring. And that's the same for Jake Paul. He was saying this so much. I got to say, before the fight, the day before, I thought Jake Paul looked really nervous, whereas Tommy Fury looked very, very comfortable, very, very secure, confident in himself. But when it came to the actual ring, they started fighting. I thought they were just at the same level, pretty much. I didn't think there was much in it, but you could definitely see that Tommy Fury was the better technical boxer, but Jake Paul was there to, he was standing his ground. He stood his ground, and he was, laying in a couple of jabs, a couple of overhand rights every now and again. So it wasn't, all one way, and that's the problem. It didn't go all Tommy Fury's way. And, he even got knocked down in the 7th or 8th round as well. But it was a jab. I think it was a left hook or a jab. It just caught him off balance. But, hey, he went down, and that's all that matters, really. Jake Paul did a point for a bit of a rabbit punch or something like that. And but the problem is, I think then Tommy Fury got deducted a point as well later, because they were just clinching all the time. It was a kind of a messy fight to watch. It wasn't clinical. It wasn't as if they were both putting in jabs and going in both combinations thereafter. It was, it wasn't as if there was lots of movement. They were circling around each other. There was a jab, maybe an overhand right, maybe an upper hook, and then it was just an uppercut rather, or a hook, here and there, and then it was straight into the clinch, and it was a kind of a messy fight. But even so, I thought Tommy Fury had the first round. Second round, I think it went evens. Third and fourth, I think, went to Tommy. Then Jake Paul started to come back at it, and it was kind of evens, maybe not as much. I think Tommy got another round. And then the last round, I think it was kind of even Stevens, even though with the knockdown as well, you probably give that to Jake. So it was a very tight fight. So I think the split decision was a right decision. So it wasn't a convincing win. So the problem here is this, that it was hyped up so much, but the quality wasn't there. It definitely wasn't there. But I always had Tommy to win. I always thought he would win this game, this fight. But I thought he would have been a bit more convincing by it. I thought he would be a bit more clinical about it. And now they're already talking about a rematch. Jake Paul had a rematch clause, whereas Tommy didn't. And so my point is this, that it should never have been this close in the first place. Because Tommy Fury is the boxer, supposedly, you might think. But he's not fighting enough. He hasn't fought enough. So is that his problem? Is that the problem of his promotional team? Is that the problem of his father, John Fury, who's his manager and trainer and stuff like that? Is this a problem that he hasn't fought enough in his young professional career? And I think that's where it is. It showed he hasn't fought enough. he hasn't actually improved himself. Whereas Jake Paul, whilst he hasn't fought, in as many proper professional bouts, he has started to try and get incrementally better with his opponents and tougher opponents. And the criticism of Jake Paul was always that, hey, you've never fought a boxer, a proper boxer. Well, this is the first time he fought a proper boxer, and guess what? He wasn't that bad, Now, what are we calling a proper boxer? Tommy Fury isn't, levels above. He's still a novice himself. But was he the right choice for Jake Paul? I think he was. He was ultimately the best choice for Jake Paul, because there's no point in putting Jake Paul, regardless of what he says, regardless of what nonsense he comes out with, and he starts calling out Mike Tyson or Carl Froch and stuff like this, and say, oh yeah, I'll take you on, I'll beat you all this sort of. And then KSI, the other YouTuber, he's got in on it, I'll beat you both, and you just just get back in your box and just be quiet a little bit. The adults are talking, if you know what I mean. And you want to kind of say, no, they've got to fight at their level, and this is how you improve as any sportsman or any discipline. If you just go in against somebody who's going to wipe the floor with you, then basically what's going to happen is that you're just going to be completely overwhelmed, and you won't learn anything. You won't improve, because you're just going to get the floor wiped with you. So what you need to do is actually fight opponents, or any opponent, whether it's a game of tennis or a game of football, a game of tiddlywinks. It doesn't make any difference in terms of, if you want to get better, you need to find somebody who's at your level, or actually just a little bit better, or quite a bit better in terms of match day or game experience. As a coach, obviously you want somebody who's a lot better and who knows what they're talking about to try and coach you. And then what you need to do is analyze exactly where you went wrong or went right in a particular duel, in a particular match, a particular fight, and so you can improve on. But you need to keep on going for fights, in this case boxing, and Tommy hasn't done that, where Jake Paul has done that. And so here's the problem. You got to a point where Jake Paul is fighting a boxer, but it's a boxer that hasn't really been in the ring a lot, and he's still really a novice. And you could tell the way Tommy Fury was fighting that he was a novice, and he is. And this is what I said before. I said, you've basically got two novices here, and regardless of what they say beforehand, this is where it is. And so it was a bit of a disappointment. It was fun. Don't get me wrong. It was fun. It was, a good little scrap, let's say. But it wasn't high quality. Now, the fight beforehand, the World Championship bout, Makabe against Badou Jack. Badou Jack coming in as the challenger. Makabe as the World Champion. Now, that was a good fight. That was a great fight, actually. Really entertaining. Really some technical moments as well. They were both catching each other. But Badou Jack was just moving around all the time. And you could see that he was very aware of, the punching power of the champion, but also, he needed to be able to, punch and move, get on the defensive straight away. But you contrast that to, Tommy Fury against Jake Paul, and then all of a sudden you can see the levels. There's differences. Quite a few, ex-pro fighters or fighters like the likes of Carl Froch, and you can say, well, yeah, the point is that Tommy Fury is a novice, yeah, but he hasn't got the skill set. He hasn't got that to be anything more than an area or a British champion at best. And even from British champion, national champion, to like a European or a world champion, big difference, massive difference in skill set required and application. So whilst Tommy Fury has won, it wasn't convincing, but a win's a win. It doesn't matter how you win, a win's a win, right? And they've got the rematch. Now the thing is, at Tommy's level, he should be only earning a few thousand per fight, right? Novice getting into the ring, not even that, just very limited numbers. But the problem is he's gotten to this influencer, social media type thing, obviously after being on Love Island and getting married, his influencer girlfriend and all that sort of stuff. Then they team up with Jake Paul, who's obviously a very big YouTube influencer star, who carries a lot of weight and brings a lot of money. Now, for this last fight, he got paid a couple of million, 2 or 3 million, whatever it was. Jake Paul gets 10 million. So all of a sudden, you think, well, can he ever be a serious boxer in terms of going back to 10, 15,000 pound fights, 5,000 pound fights, to try and ply his trade to get up to that, get up to that level? Or should he abandon that and just keep on going after the money? The thing is, boxers' careers can be very, very short. It really depends. So you kind of think, well, are you going in for it for the fight, the titles, or are you a prize fighter? You're just going where the money is, and the money is after these big influencers. So if he takes another fight with Jake Paul, he's not going to improve his boxing, but he's going to earn a lot of money. Then if he gets onto a KSI fight, yeah. What about if you fought Logan Paul, right? What about if you fought somebody else, who's really, if the influencer boxing on the other side, because the influencer boxing on the other side is getting very popular because you've got celebrities or internet celebrities, internet famous people entering the boxing ring to fight each other like a white collar type of boxing, but they've got fans and their fan base are really engaged with it, and they don't necessarily know about boxing, but they just really want to see how the person that they're a fan of is really going to do. So whilst everybody in that sector is learning about boxing, they're not necessarily being there for the boxing, technical boxing. They're there for the story, as they like to call it in the YouTube world. They're there for the event. They're there for all the other aspects, but they're there fundamentally to see somebody who they follow against somebody else who they follow, and the stories and the beefs that they have with each other and all this sort of stuff. Whereas in the boxing world, the proper pro boxing world, and even the amateur boxing to a certain degree, there isn't that. There isn't that level of interest. There isn't that level of engagement. There isn't that level of that you're invested, that you care about these people who are getting into the ring. Whereas on the YouTuber side, they kind of do. There is much more of a care. They care about what is going on. What is happening. What is happening out there. So it's going to be an interesting one. I mean, personally, I would say if Tommy Fury's already coming in for a bit of flack here because he won. Yes, he won, but it wasn't convincing. It wasn't high quality, but that's fine because it doesn't have to be, because you got to appreciate where he is. I think I said earlier in the week on a quick short, I said, just kind of don't underestimate Jake Paul. Don't underestimate or overestimate your quality and underestimate your opponent. And I think maybe that's what they did. They did a little bit, and I think they were a little bit surprised about where they were at, and whilst Jake Paul didn't offer any technical resistance in terms of quality resistance, he was definitely resistant, and he definitely took some punches, and he's got to be proud of his position. But he was always onto a winner. He was never going to be losing here in terms of if he loses, he lost to a boxer, all right. So he can carry on. He carries on going to fight KSIs or any other person who wants to jump in the ring, or an MMA fight or whatever. Whereas Tommy Fury hasn't got the name, so he really has to now enter this YouTuber influencer boxing world to take on anybody who wants to come at him, or he has to ditch all that and go for the pro fighting route, but he has to lose all that money. He won't be offered all this money. In fact, world title fighters are not earning that kind of money. So I can see they're going to be in a bit of a dilemma here. His management team, his father primarily, they're going to be saying, right, well, are they really happy with that result? Are they really happy with that performance. I personally, whilst there's lots of bravado and there's lots of cheering, there's lots of, yeah, he did it. And, you know, Tommy Fury, there's tears at the end of it, and it's almost like a Rocky Balboa moment. Yo, Adrian, we did it. You know, that kind of thing. You know, the problem is, you know, and people are mocking him for that. But the thing is, it's still a stressful moment. It's still the stress of the last, you know, couple of years of him, you know, to and fro and this, and, you know, the weight of the world on his shoulders, the weight of the family on his shoulders as well. So you kind of understand it. Whilst it's a little bit over the top, you kind of understand it. The problem is also is that this fight was artificially made bigger than it was than by the WBC. The Saudis obviously just put on a big show, a great show by all accounts. Everybody was there, everybody was reporting, all the YouTuber boxing channels, they're all saying how great it was, they were reporting how great it was. Everybody they interviewed said how great it was and everything. So whilst Saudi has got a really, nobody wanted to say whilst they were there, hey, look, Saudi Arabia's got a really bad international reputation, human rights abuses, all this sort of stuff. They're coming a lot of criticism. You know, nobody wanted to mention it there. Everybody was on their best behaviour. Everybody was on their P's and Q's. It was almost like they were all conditioned to make sure that they say positive things about Saudi Arabia, which is, as we know, whilst it might have been positive from their point of view, behind the scenes, you know that there's a lot of bad things going on from that area as well. But I suppose you could say the same about many countries as well, right? So, you know, everybody was really positive about it, and the WBC were there on force, and it was almost like it was a big show about nothing. And it was almost like everybody was trying to convince the world of boxing, or the boxing fans around the world, hey, this is a bigger fight than it actually was, because it isn't a big fight. You know, if these two, without the hype, would just put on an undercard of a world boxing fight, which if they were on the undercard of Badou Jack against Makabu, let's say, well, okay, fine. But nobody would have really paid much attention. They would just, you know, had their fight and away they go. But because it was built up as such a big thing, all of a sudden, you know, you've got interest. You've got interest there. So the WBC, they produce their own commemorative bout that now they call it the Diriyah Championship. This is the first time it's ever been fought in that area by the Saudis. They're trying to promote it. They're trying to get bigger on the stage. I wrote about this, and I talked about this a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when I was saying about the Middle Eastern countries, Saudi, you know, UAE, Dubai, Qatar. They're heavily investing in sports. They're heavily investing in sporting activities because they want to diversify. They want to not only just rely on the oil money, they want to, you know, diversify into other big revenue streams. And they're throwing money at it right now, left, right, and centre. And they're making it very appealing for people or sports people to go there. You know, Cristiano Ronaldo's just gone there, hasn't he, to play his football. Yes, he's coming to the end of his career, but they're paying him £200 million a year. Hey, why wouldn't you? But the criticism of the WBC was that they said to these two very novice fighters, whoever wins will get a WBC ranking, a top 40, which is just ridiculous. So this is really hacked off. This is really pissed off proper boxing prospects who are so much better, levels above these two, because they're just older, they're just more experienced, they're just better fighters, let's say, and they can't get a WBC ranking. So what's that? That just belittles what the ranking is. That WBC have just shot themselves in the foot. You've basically created a ranking for the winner here, Tommy Fury now in this case, and it's just ridiculous. He's undeserving of it. What, just because he's fought a YouTuber? No, that doesn't work. You've completely screwed yourselves. So from Tommy Fury and from Jake Paul and from the Saudis, the promoters, they've done exactly what they had to do. They went there, they did all the hype, They did all the, they went there. They put on a great show in terms of the level that they're at. I'm not knocking them, but it was at the level that they're at. It was an entertaining show. There was a bit of, nonsense from the crowd and a bit of heckling and all this sort of stuff. There was interviews with Jake Paul's brother at the ringside, which I thought was during the fight, and they had it coming over the tannoy so everybody could hear it. It was just that shouldn't have been done. That should have just been and so it got unprofessional from that point of view. But they did what they needed to do, and they've walked away. Well, Tommy has walked away with a win and a couple of million in the bank. So he'll probably never earn that money again. So from the boxing world, you've got to look at yourself, and this is already started to happen. You've got pro boxers from the boxing world that are thinking maybe we should just abandon the pro boxing route and try and get a foothold in this influencer boxing. Try and make ourselves more appealing so we can get signed up to the likes of Misfits, the KSI influencer boxing. Because what they want to do from Misfits, they want to have a pro boxing section. So you got pro fighters in there, all levels above. So you could say like the Jake Paul would go into the pro boxing section there. So you could take on fighters. So that kind of makes sense. You've got fighters who want to come away from the WBC, WBO, IBF, IBO world champions and all that sort of stuff, or WBO champions. And what they want to do is say, right, actually, we'll just create our own. Because at the end of the day, if you win a world title or not, you're still not going to get paid enough. So we'll just go and fight and be called the Misfits world champion. It's just, in many ways, it's just another council. It's just another organization saying that we're going to give you a world ranking. And they've created their own world ranking or their own competition, so they can call it whatever they want. So if pro boxers want to get in there and get more regular fights and they're getting bigger purses, then you're kind of thinking, I completely agree. Does that make them better boxers? No. Does that make them better, not necessarily, I should say. Does that make them, more credible as boxers? No, because then they won't necessarily be fighting class level fighters. There might be a little bit less, or they might be just fighting against somebody with this, a better name or a bigger name in terms of social media, but it doesn't necessarily mean they'll be better fighters. So there's lots of levels here. What's going on? Does Tommy Fury abandon the pro boxing route, the traditional route, the one that's got the most credibility in terms of boxing, or does he go and fight just influencers? Does he fight those guys? Let's face it, if he fights Jake Paul now, because he'll be able to demand a bigger payback. You can just imagine what's going to happen. They say, yeah, I want a rematch. They say a rematch on this fight. I say, fine. I'm not getting paid $2.5 million now, though. If you want to fight me for this rematch, it's going to cost you $10 million, right? So Jake Paul's going to go, yeah, okay, maybe I will. Yeah, okay, fine. We'll give you $10 million, right? So Tommy Fury only has to fight this one fight against Jake Paul. He'll never have to work again. Do you know what I mean? He's never going to earn that money in boxing. So then all he has to have is 2 or 3 box fights as, an influencer boxing. And you can just imagine what's going to happen in the influencer world. They're going to be clamoring to try and get better, bigger enough to fight somebody like Tommy. So Tommy Fury is in the perfect position here to launch a new career in influencer boxing challenges, let's say, but still being a pro fighter. And there's other pro fighters out there who could only wish they were in Tommy Fury's position. But it's kind of abandoning the pro boxing route, the traditional pro boxing route. Now, if boxing as a sport put on more bouts, put on more. It was like boxing every week. There was, a lot more challenge, a lot more high profile, a lot more high purses. If there was a lot more money in it, if there was a more equal distribution of purses, let's say, in terms of the, because it's only the major big world championship fights, like the heavyweights especially, and if you've got a big name, that attracts a lot of money, the pay-per-view. But it's only certain ones. So if you got like a Tyson Fury, I mean, now there's a problem with Tyson Fury against Usyk. Is it going to get on? Possibly there's Andy Ruiz who's coming in to fight Tyson Fury. They're kind of pushing a little bit for a Deontay Wilder fourth fight as well. I'm not sure. I don't want to see that. I'm not sure if that, would see that. But you kind of look and say, well, if the Usyk fight doesn't get made, Tyson Fury's got to fight. He's got to fight somebody. So, okay, Ruiz, go in. But, it's not going to be a good fight. It'll be all right. It'll be an interesting fight. Unless Ruiz can clock him, shock him, surprise him like he did AJ in the first fight. But really, we know the money fight is Fury against AJ. Even though AJ's down, he's going to be fighting Franklin soon in the next month or so. And if he gets through that, which you kind of expect he should, but that's the fight that needs to bring it up. But it's only very small fights here and there that get the big money. Most of the fights are, hardly anything. So it really depends what sort of appetite does Tommy Fury have, and his father, especially, because I think there's a patriarch there. He's definitely doing what his dad's telling him to do, in many ways. To say, well, listen. You see, if I was his father, I'd be saying, right, okay, let's just look at where we're at. You haven't really fought many fights in the last few years. Yes, COVID was an issue and all that sort of stuff, but even before then, there wasn't enough fights in a short period of time. You should be fighting a lot more. You should be fighting better opposition. You should be improving, getting better and better and better in the British boxing scene and everything. But you're not doing that. You've been going off and doing other things, obviously that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're not on that strict boxing path. So this is where we're at. You're a fighter, you're a boxer, but you should be more advanced than you actually are. That's the key. And you should have fought more than you actually are. But here's the thing. Let's go back. Let's review your fight against Jake Paul and actually dissect everything. The good, but definitely the bad. And I'm sure they do. Every sportsman should be doing this. Every coach, every manager should be doing this with their people, just looking at everything, dissecting it. Because Jake Paul's going to be doing it and everybody else does it, right? But they've got to be honest with themselves. Things say, where do they wrong? Why did Tommy Fury stop moving after his jab? Why was he, a couple of combinations? His accuracy on his combinations was way off. He was missing more than he was connecting. But his movement after the third and fourth round, he was very static. He was very square on, and that's why he kept on getting caught, because he just wasn't moving. His hands were way down as well. And that's his style. I've seen him try to do that a lot. But the thing is, you're leaving yourself way open, and because of that, he was way open. He needs to be, a lot less of this kind of movement, which is a style of a fighter from years ago. I forgot what it. Sugar Ray used to do it. Sugar Ray Leonard used to do that kind of thing, this kind of thing, as well. But it needs to be more industrious. It needs to be more, traditional, as it were. He's got it in him. He's definitely got it in him, but he's just not at that level now. So this Jake Paul fight was his level, really. That's what but he's a better boxer. He's definitely a better technical boxer, but he just didn't carry it through. If he carried it through and was more accurate with his punching the first couple of rounds and thereafter, he would have won him within the first 3 or 4 rounds, like he said he was going to do. But he didn't do that, and that's the problem. So they got to analyse where they were. They got to analyse what they thought they were going to do in that ring. But then they've got to really have a long, hard look at themselves and ask the question, is he good enough to go the traditional boxing route, the pro boxing route, or is he not? Is he not? Is he? Let's face it. Is he not good enough for that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that he is good enough to go there. And I think if you put him in a ring, the problem is they got to take a chance now. For me, they got to take a chance with credible fighters from the British boxing scene, or not even just the British boxing scene, but around Europe, let's say, even from the United States, that are levels, or they've got to re-kickstart his boxing program, because they haven't. They've laxed it a little bit, and they need to really start saying, okay, the next fight, should we go back to Jake Paul, or do they go down, no, we want to get another fight? And the thing is, he's got a name now. He's got a bit of money. He's got a bit of notoriety behind him, so that's going to help any other fighter wanting to fight him as well, because he's going to take a big name. So it's going to help him in normal boxing circles. There's no reason why he can't do both. He carries on the traditional boxing route, but he's also going to do these influencer bouts as well. But he's got to make a decision which one he really needs to focus on. Because if he starts underestimating, or starts thinking he's better than he is in the traditional boxer route, he'll get clocked straight away. I think, when you listen to all the YouTube videos and interviews over this last week with his family, Tyson Fury, John Fury, all this sort of stuff, possibly the one family member, the one brother who was most realistic was Shane Fury. Shane Fury, I thought, spoke very well in terms of what he was expecting and what he thought, and he seemed to be a lot more level-headed about his appraisal of the situation, and he's basically saying all the stuff. I'm sure behind the scenes there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of internal pressure going on there. But he seemed to be more level-headed, and he said, look, if it's a points win, he still goes home. But I think they all wanted him to punch his lights out, and they always wanted him to get the KO. That would have been properly convincing. See, that would have put it to bed straight away. The problem is now, because it wasn't a clear win. Well, it was a win. It was a clear win, but it was a split decision. It wasn't a convincing win. And Jake Paul had his moments in that fight as well. And for many people, it could have gone either way. But I think I'm pretty sure it was the right decision. I definitely had Tommy as the better boxer, whilst he may not have been connecting, and whilst his defense was poor at times, a lot of times, he was still the better boxer. But he's still very low, well, not low level, but do you know what I mean? He's, as we like to say, as you would like to say, he's a novice. He's just above novice. Great, that's great quality. Don't get me wrong. That's great levels in terms of everyday people or everyday fighters, but in terms of when you're talking about getting onto British Championship, European Championship, World Championships, it's not right. It's not there. So he's got a lot to learn. He's got a lot to improve upon, and you bet your bottom dollar that's what Jake Paul is doing. And the likes of the other influencers out there who got on this, they're looking at this and they're saying, actually, do you know what? It wasn't that good. It wasn't that great. I can see, and this is why you get the likes of KSI coming out saying, look, I could take both of these guys, because they're analysing what their movement was like, what their, where they're punching from. Jake Paul, I mean, if you really, this is a problem with online stuff, with, say, people in the comment section. I was just watching a couple of live streams before the fight, and it wasn't the guys in the live stream so much. It was actually in the comments section, and I know I tried to put my own little comments in every now and again, but some of the comments was just absolute nonsense, and it just reams and reams and reams, and these comments coming obviously all over the world. It's just like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I don't think there was ever a risk of Jake Paul actually properly knocking Tommy Fury out. but he definitely rose to the occasion. He was definitely better than many people were giving him credit for. But what happened was that because Tommy Fury didn't put him away properly, then and he wasn't convincing enough. This opens it up now. This opens it up to this, challenges to proper boxers again. If Tommy Fury had gone in there, first round, knockout, 30 seconds, bang, you're out, then all of a sudden, everybody would be like, well, there you go. There you go. We told you. And that's what they were telling us. That's what the Tommy Fury and the Fury family, that's what they're telling us. That's what pro boxers were telling us. Yeah, this is what he's going to bash him out. Then other people were saying, no, hold on. This is going to be a lot closer. And I thought it was going to be close. I didn't think it was going to be that close. I thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be 6-7 round TKO or something like that. I thought that's what it was going to be. But no, so I didn't get it right either. But, in the end, I thought it was an uncomfortably close win for Tommy Fury. And what he needs to do, if he's going to fight Jake Paul again, was first of all negotiate a much, much bigger purse. A much bigger purse. Because why not? Why wouldn't you do that? Get millions, get more millions. Do that. But the second thing is you cannot overestimate your abilities, because your abilities are still wanting, and Jake Paul is definitely going to improve. And you need to analyse, and your father and all your coaches, you need to analyse everything in that fight that you were doing wrong and improve on those and get better at those. And your punching power and your more so your accuracy and things like that. That's where you're going to be. It's going to work dividends in the pro boxing route, proper bouts, when you're going to only get 10 grand, 20 grand a fight, or 30 grand a fight. You'll probably be able to command a lot more than that now, 40, 50, 60 grand a fight, whatever. And the thing is, on the WBC, top 40 ranking, the problem is that kind of means absolutely nothing now. That means absolutely nothing, doesn't it? Because they've, as I said, they've already caused an issue there. They've already caused an issue by giving the Fury, or it could have been Jake Paul if he'd won, the ranking. It's an absurd thing to do. So I don't know where. I think the Furies are going to be asking themselves the very same thing now. Which is the best route for them? Which is the best route for Tommy Fury? Does he go the pro boxing route? Does he abandon all this big money? And it might only be around for a year or so, or does he carry on? It's a difficult one, because he'll never have the credibility. What I didn't like about the Jake Paul thing was that just because he's a big YouTube name, just because the way he's always acted, he thinks he can muscle himself into the boxing world, and he starts calling people out left, right, and centre. And this is what really annoyed me. And the problem is, some of the pro boxers have bitten, and they've tried to bite back, and it's kind of a little bit silly, because this is what he's done. He's goaded the likes of ex-world champion Carl Froch, right? Legendary fighter, right? He's well retired. 10 years ago, whatever it was, mid-40s now. But he's a world championship fighter, right? Then all of a sudden you think, right, okay, they start at each other. But Jake Paul then turns round to Carl Froch, online this is, and he says, go fight Anderson Silva, the MMA fighter who I beat, and then maybe we'll talk about fighting. In other words, he's saying to Carl Froch, ex-world champion, who's still in good nick, right? Ex-world champion, and saying, you have to prove yourself, because the people in America don't know you. And the people in America don't know the name. Then all of a sudden, in order for me to sell this fight, guess what? You have to become a household name, therefore people will take note. Now, this is the thing. This is what we're talking about here. People who know boxing who are boxing fans absolutely know who Carl Froch is. It's got nothing to do. He's a British fighter. They will know who's the world champion. But from Jake Paul's point of view, who he's bringing all the eyes and he's bringing all the attention, and also he's attracting all the money. He's saying there's no point in me fighting somebody who nobody knows, regardless of if they're fantastic or not, because nobody's going to care, because nobody's going to be interested. And this is something that I suppose we've all got to realise here. It's not about the fight, the quality of the fight, it's the name. And that's why I can't take Jake Paul seriously. I don't take him seriously, because all he's doing is going after a name and not the quality of the fighter. And he's not interested in improving in terms of incrementally stepping up in terms of boxing. What he's thinking, I just want to go for a name. The only reason he went after Tommy Fury, no disrespect to Tommy Fury, was because he is a Fury. He's a Tyson Fury brother. That's the only reason. If his name was Joe Bloggs, novice fighter, he's not going to go after him. Even if he has got a bit of a social media following, he's not going to go after him. There's no point. So, he's kind of being Jake Paul. He's kind of being disrespectful to the sport. I think but he's in terms of the professional sport, and he's trying to muscle himself in and create his own little pathway. But at the same time, I kind of think, well, actually, do you know what? That's what he has to do. There's no problem in that. But it's not professional fighting if he's doing that. All he's doing is just prize fighting. Yeah, prize fighting with non-prize fighters, let's put it that way. Or prize fighters who are a lot better than him. It's just prize fighting without any credibility. So if you're going to start fighting, ex-fighters, whatever like that, and call them out, because all they're thinking is, I will put this guy on his ass, and I'll get paid 5 million, 6 million, whatever it is, 10 million, 2 million. People are thinking, yeah, I'll do that. Why not? But that's the thing. All they need to do is trick, because they're going to be out of shape. They're going to have to get into the ring. They have to get into the gym. They have to do lots of sparring sessions. They probably have to a couple of tune-up fights as well, just to make sure they're back in the game. But let's face it, once you had it, you don't lose it. You might lose speed. You might lose. You might be ring rusty in terms of that. But once you're at that level, you're at that level. As simple as that. So the problem is, the likes of Jake Paul, they don't understand what they're really talking about. They don't understand what they're actually saying. And for ex-world champions to bite like that, the problem is that, I have no doubt in my mind that they would win. But for me, if one of these ex-fighters got in the ring with Jake Paul, they need to take him out within the first round. It needs to be that aggressive. It needs to be 100% juggernaut coming in. Bosh. That's what a proper boxer does. That's what world championship level does. Regardless of my age, you're going down first round, knockout, boom. And then that teaches the likes of Jake Paul to say, oh, okay, hold on. And that's what I bet most pro boxers or most pro boxing fans like me would like to see. Now, I wanted to see that. I wanted to see Tommy Fury put Jake Paul on his arse within the first round, the second round. I just wanted him to do that. Or I wanted him to, if you can let it go on for 4 or 5 rounds, I wanted him to be completely schooling him, tagging him every single game, never getting hit. That kind of thing. To say, look, I'm just toying with you, and then all of a sudden, bang, you're gone. That's what I wanted to see. Obviously, it didn't happen. So any pro boxer that goes into that ring needs to be, for me, at that level to take him out completely. But as soon as that happens, that destroys the ability for Jake Paul to get another pro boxing fight, and to get money, to get attention for it. Because as soon as he's lost, by being KO'd really quickly, all of a sudden the eyes of the world won't be interested in that. They'll be interested in watching Jake Paul fight other YouTubers or other influencers. That'll make decent money in their world, as it were, but not in the global boxing world. So in many ways, the Tommy Fury win, in the manner in which he did it, whilst it's great for Tommy Fury in terms of it's another win on the record, he's 9-0 now, it's the worst thing that could have happened for Jake Paul still being the likes of Jake Paul still being talked about in terms of boxing circles, in terms of, you know, pro boxing circles. They're all boxing. They're all getting into the ring. Don't get me wrong. They're not. It's not as if, you know, they are. You know, it's not as if these are stupid exhibition fights or something between like a Mayweather and, you know, stuff like that, which is just ridiculous. You know, I don't know what the hell he's doing. You know, and exhibition fights. I'm just, come on, what, you know, but. You know, I think exhibition fights, you look at exhibition fights, you know, sometimes with a bit of nostalgia, and you go, oh, wouldn't it be great to see him in the ring again? And, you know, oh, yeah, okay, bash, bash, bash. You know, show your skills, have a bit of fun. At the end of the day, it's not great. But all of a sudden, when, you know, if you want it to be taken seriously, you know, then all of a sudden you think, what am I watching this for? And that's the problem. So if you're saying if you get into, this is why YouTuber boxing is so popular, or getting very popular, because all of a sudden you got two people in there who actually want to go for it. It's not an exhibition. They are trying to go for it. They are trying to take each other's heads off. They don't have the skill set, but they're trying to go for it, and they gas out really quickly, and, you know, one, you know, gets hit, and the other, you know, the one, you know, you get the likes of KSI or Salt Pappy, or, you know, whomever it is, you know, Deji getting on there, you know, other, and you just like, and the problem is they get into the boxing world, they get into the box, you know, and the thing is, you know, if I come up against them, let's say, you know, and you know, and I'd be like, well, I'm not even a boxer. But, you know, you should not be talking like that, because you are not at nowhere near those levels. And the point is, they surround themselves with people who say, yeah, you're fantastic. Oh, YouTubers, oh, yeah, fantastic, you're fantastic. But I can tell you, I can take any one of them down to a local boxing gym, any one of them to a local boxing gym, and we know this. It's not me saying anything, you know, bad here. But we know this, that you take those guys any local boxing gym and say, right, let's get, you know, your novice, let's get your medium level, let's get your higher level boxer, and see how they do against any of them right now. You know, five sparring rounds, let's go. Nah, it ain't happening. You might take out a complete novice, but you ain't taking out anybody else. No chance. You know, and at your weight, and, you know, a proper fight, a proper sparring session, proper, you know, a no holds barred sparring session, in terms of, in other words, you know, actual going for it. This is a proper contest. Let's see how you do. They wouldn't last. There's no way. Now, the likes of Jake Paul and, you know, because he's been doing pro fights, he's been getting better. Yeah, he probably would do quite well against the novice and maybe against the medium rated, but the higher rated boxing, no, he'd still get completely schooled. The point I'm trying to make is that these guys in the boxing gyms are not household names. They're probably ranked way down the list. In fact, they're probably not even ranked, but they'll still school you. You know, when they're talking about, you know, Jake Paul fighting MMA fighters, I've said this repeatedly, time and time again. MMA fighters are not specialist fighters, okay? Or they may have a specialist, or so they may be a specialist in a non-striking role, a striking art, but they're not boxers, okay? So what happens is that let's say they want to improve their striking, their boxing skills, so they go to a boxing gym, or they get a boxing coach in to help them, right? And I've heard MMA fighters, proper MMA fighters, who talk about this, and who talk about their learning, right? And this is what people got to understand. It's how they learn, right? They say if we go into a boxing gym and we want to go up against a boxer any level, I've heard it said time and time again, right? We will get our asses kicked completely. It's not fun. And the problem is it's not fun, but also critically, right, they do not learn anything. But if they go into a boxing gym, or if they go in humble, let's say, and ask to, can you help me out? Can you improve me? All this sort of stuff. Then the boxers or the boxing coaches, yes, they teach them in the art of striking. That doesn't mean that boxers are the best MMA fighters. In fact, they're probably one of the worst, because you're talking about complete, and that's why you get the grapplers and the wrestlers and the kickers and everything like that. It's just taking you out. But in terms, if they want to improve their striking, hand-to-hand combat skills, or just fighting skills, they go to a boxing gym. But most levels of boxers who have been doing it a while completely take them apart if they wanted to. So this is where they say, oh, he's fought, there was comments on the YouTube channels as well. They said, oh yeah, but he's taking out MMA fighters about Jake Paul. How well he's going to KO Tommy. I said, yeah, but they're MMA fighters. You've been told this 100 million times now. They're only MMA fighters. People don't understand. They don't understand what they're listening to. The thing is, people got carried away with the hype as well. People from within boxing circles and everything thought, oh yeah, it's going to be Jake Paul. Oh, I think it's going to be Jake Paul and everything like that. And you're like, really? Based upon what? Based upon what? The fight. Look, in all fairness, in many ways, they're kind of looking at it and to say, well, actually, Tommy Fury is such a novice, and he's not fought enough, and he's not fought enough recently for it to be a foregone conclusion that he would win. So from that point of view, I completely agree. I completely think, well, do you know what? This could go either way. But you would think that any boxer who's saying was predicting that Jake Paul's going to win, you kind of think, what are you looking at here? Because everything that I saw from the Jake Paul fighting history was not good at all. Not good. Technical. And and the people keep on throwing it in your face, saying, oh well, he's fought the MMA and Silva and Woodley, and but they're not fighters. Their defense is way open. Their stance is all over the place. They're not boxers. We're not talking about fighting. We're not talking about street fighting. We're not talking about MMA fighting. You're talking about entering a boxing ring. That's what you're talking about. You're not talking about doing anything else. You're talking about fighting. You're talking in a boxing ring. You're talking about the art, the science of boxing. That's why it's called an art. That's why it's called a science of boxing. Because it is a very specialist art. And that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about if you're the toughest guy in the world. We're not talking if you can street fight. We're talking about, can you do that? Can you do that? And, so that's, you can do it. Jake Paul can do that, but at this level here. Not this level. And Tommy Fury, because he's a good, solid boxer, good in the gym and everything like that, but he's not there. He's not even there. He's kind of just, he should be, for where he's at, he should be kind of approaching mid-tier, really. But he's not, because he hasn't paid attention to it. He hasn't applied himself in as many fights. This is not his fault either. This is the whole camp. They haven't pushed him to fight loads and loads of fights in his early career, leveling up fights. He had 8 fights against pretty poor opposition, whereas Jake Paul has had incrementally better fights against better fighters, whilst they're not boxers. So that's why the argument was, well, actually, he's fought better opponents and he's gone longer and he's had more rounds. So he should, he's more used to the big scene, let's say, the big, the event. He's, the world title, fighting in front of millions. He's more used to it, whereas Tommy Fury isn't. So Tommy Fury is just about the same level, if not just a little bit better. He's a better boxer, better technical boxer, but, not necessarily in for the fight, as it were, like Jake Paul was. Jake Paul's not a good enough fighter, but he was there. He was tough old boots, and he took his punishment. But he was slipping quite a bit as well. And he's putting out the jab there, a couple of overhand rights here and there. But he stood firm. You got to give credit where credit is due. But the levels are still down there. If Tommy Fury had fought more in the last couple of years, or he definitely made strides to fight bigger fighters. In the meantime, whilst waiting, instead of waiting for this Jake Paul fight, if he just gone out there and said, no, we're going to keep on fighting, we're going to fight £10,000 purses, or they promote their own fight, they get out there and just promote, even if they push it out against people that, other boxers they should win. He would have been much better in the ring. He would have been much crisper in the ring. He would have been a lot better. Instead of saying, okay, I've been in camp for so long and I've been going against all these world-class sparrers and everything like that, and hey, the rumours come out, we broke a, sparring partner's jaw and all this sort of stuff. That's not fighting. Well, that's not having a fight, is it? That's sparring. So what he needed to do, he needed to be levels above due to recent fighting experience. And this is where I come back to, all these ex-fighters, retired fighters who possibly might be getting called out by all these influencers to say, okay, come in the ring. He said that's the problem that they have. They don't have any recent fighting experience, so they need to regain that kind of level, or any kind of level that's going to be levels above what the likes of Jake Paul is. So that's where Tommy is kind of let himself down in terms of this. He could have made it a lot better for himself if he had excuse me, if he had more recent fighting experience. That's the long and short of it, really. That is the long and short of it. If he'd had more recent experience, more combat experience recently, more fights, more credible opponents, or opponents that were at his level. And this is what he needs to do. For me, this is what he needs to do now. He needs to dissect where he's gone. Before he gets back into the ring with Jake Paul, or any other YouTuber, he needs to fight other boxers, proper boxers. And, he needs to get better sparring sessions, let's say. But, if he's taken all these sparring sessions, they didn't improve him that much. So that's what you need to fight against people who don't want to be your friend, who don't want to help you improve. They want to knock your block off. And that's how you're going to get improved. You have to get into the wars a little bit more in order to go into another big war. So, big decisions for me for Tommy Fury, I think. Jake Paul, not so much. Jake Paul, I don't think there's many decisions he needs to make. He just needs to... I think, he was... a bit of a sore loser, I suppose you could say. That he said he had problems with his health. He wasn't feeling too great. He was feeling flat. He'd hurt his hand in the fight. All this kind of stuff. But at the same time, he needed to, He was saying, it's humbling, he didn't like it that nobody's going to like it if they lose, of course not. But I don't think he was a bit shell-shocked, I think. He thought they were definitely going to win. They thought we were going to, they believe their own hype. That's the thing. YouTubers, these YouTubers, because I'm one as well, I suppose, but these kind of guys, they're operating at a completely different level that I'm operating at, of course. But they are operating in this kind of world that just reinforces how good they are all the time. They believe their own hype. And when it comes to this, when you're in the real world, particularly of boxing, proper boxing, look, you can take the likes of Jake Paul or any of these YouTubers, any of these influencer boxers, right? Go on YouTube right now, or after this live show, right? Go on to YouTube. Look out for, fair fairground boxing, or real fights or something like this, right? Basically, guys just in a ring made up, in a field somewhere, bales of hay or straw, and that's it. And basically, that's the likes of what Tommy Fury's family were always doing. They come from the gypsy community, the travelling community. That's what they got, horse fairs all over the country. They all fight each other. They're all fighting families. They all fight each other. Bare knuckle fighting and everything like that. They come from proper fighting, right? But you get some of the likes of Jake Paul in one of these, small, fighting fairs. Guess what? He'll get clocked straight away. There's no way, when you talk about being hard, hard men and everything, there's so many other, hard men or great fighters, great boxers who never got the opportunity. You don't know about them because they never end up in the limelight. But they could be great, great fighters. They just didn't have that opportunity. Obviously, Jake Paul is shining a light on the boxing world and everything like that. But it may not be for the right reasons, or it may be for the right reasons. It just may not be for the right reasons that people really want. Eddie Hearn was famously said, because when he promoted a couple of early influencer boxing fights, KSI against Logan Paul. I think the first one he was involved in might have been with the second one as well. Can't remember. But he said he'll never do it again. He'll never do it again. Whilst he appreciates it, whilst he sees there's money there and there's hype and everything like that, he said because it's not proper boxing. He's a purist, and he says, I want to see good quality. And I'm exactly the same. It's not that I agree with Eddie Hearn and everything, or I agree with the hype that he brings with anything like that. It's just that I've always said this. I like to see, regardless of what it's at, whether you're talking motorcycles, whether you're talking cars, whether you're talking woodworking, whether you're talking, stamp collecting, whether you're talking art, music, whatever it is, I like to see people doing something really well to a high standard, and I appreciate when so this is my point, you see. So let's say you get mediocre boxers at the level, or novice fighters, let's say Jake Paul and Tommy Fury. Yet you can watch it and it can be an entertaining fight. I'm not saying it wasn't entertaining, but you can tell it's not great standard, right? You can watch great standard fights in this case, but it might not be entertaining because they cancel each other out. It's too technical. This happens in all sports. It happens in all things. But I just really appreciate anybody who does whatever they choose to do at a really high level, at a professional level. And for me, professionalism is basically this. I've always said this. A professional is not necessarily somebody who does all fancy stuff, fancy tricks. A professional does the basics to a really, really high standard. A professional looks at discipline, the way they comport themselves, the way they do things, on a day-to-day basis. That's what a professional is, But a fighter, but a fighter at that level, at Jake Paul level, at Tommy Fury's level, they've still got a long, long way to go. But it doesn't mean that you can't find it entertaining. It's just not at that level. So that's where I see, the higher level boxing, the World Championship fights, the British Championships, title fights, European title fights, United States, whatever country. And when you got a title fight, then you're talking, okay, well, now you're levels above. Now you're really talking about quality, and then you can really look at the the quality of because it's not necessarily just if somebody can be aggressive in a fight and take the fight to an opponent, but it's also how the opponent can defend themselves as well. Are they static? What's their movement like? Can they, slip and roll? Can they, whatever it is, can they get out of the way of a punch? And this is where you'll see, well, somebody's moving around a ring and they may not be engaging, but at the same time, they may not be engaging, but they're not getting hit. And if you look at certain fighters, they say, well, actually, I can do this for 2 or 3 rounds. Let you tire yourself out. let you throw a few punches, which I'm going to keep on slipping. Then I'm going to keep on doing it until you tire yourself out. Your arms get a bit heavy, and then all of a sudden I'm going to start hitting you with combinations. And that's, you're talking high-level, skilled, quality boxing. Whereas, what we saw at the weekend wasn't that. It wasn't that. There's a lot to be. It's entertainment at the end of the day. That's what it was. It was entertainment, but it wasn't quality boxing entertainment. It was just entertainment, and that might be the right thing, but it might be the right thing for influencer boxing, but it's not the right thing necessarily for boxing. And this is where Tommy Fury's got to think which way he wants to go. Does he want to go after the money, which he'll undoubtedly get if he carries on fighting the likes of Jake Paul? If the likes of KSI or the likes of Logan Paul want to get into a ring with him, or the likes of, I don't know, whoever else wants to get into a ring with him. But or does he want to go pro boxing route? That's it. I got a message here. Colin Gothorpe, come on, what? Sorry, so I haven't really looked at the messages. I haven't really, not even sure if anybody's watching, or maybe if you're watching this later on. So this is, this is my thought over the weekend. Really, I was doing my motorcycle stuff over the weekend. I had to do a few things. I got a couple of videos coming out this week as well. But also, I'm a big sports fan. Right, no, I was watching all the. I'm a big boxing fan, big football fan, especially football. Football's my number one, but boxing is a close second. That's not a close second, but it's a second, let's say. But I was taken in with the hype of this fight as well. And it's this is where I say boxing, traditional boxing, can learn a lot from the way these kinds of fights and the way the fans of influencer boxing really engage with it. They can learn a lot, and if they kind of dismiss it too much, they're missing out on an opportunity to improve the sport. But to take these kinds of bouts or influencer boxing seriously, no, not in terms of that. And people who know that will be able to tell you that. And proper, boxers in any boxing gym around the globe, even at amateur level, will look at this and go, "Really? No, come on, that's not." You can just tell when somebody is at such a high level. When someone's at a high level, that they're doing something at a professional level, right? And that you can tell that the quality is there. And yeah, they might be coming up against a better fighter, but you can still tell that they're. So I mean, I make the comparison between, let's say, if I go to watch a football, right? I go to watch my team, West Ham United. If you watch my the channel, and I do little video pieces for other channels as well, and I grumble away at what I've seen, and we go into the games, and we either come away disillusioned or angry or whatever, happy, depends on the way. But we've always got something to say, and the criticism of fans has always been from pro footballers. Oh, what do they know? They've never played the game and all this sort of stuff. And this really infuriates fans like me to say, well, actually, I've not played it to your level, right? But it doesn't matter if I've played it to your level or not. Actually, we can still analyse the game, and we can still see how it should be played, and we can still see where it should be and where the mistakes have been made, and where there are weaknesses, where there are strengths, where there are good footballers being played, and all that sort of stuff. So we observe, and we can see what is good or not. So whilst I've never reached the standard of a pro boxer or anything like that, I can still look at boxing, and I can say, because I've been a fan for 40 years, I can look at a boxer and say, okay, he's got weakness there, he's got a drop there, he's not moving around there. Because you compare it to upper level pro boxers, and you say, okay, I got you there. Now, do I have the insight of a pro boxer? No, of course not. I'm still looking, but I still have my own insight. I can still look at something and say, he's leaving himself wide open there. He's not doing that well. And you can say the same about anything in life. you see something that they're weak in certain areas, so they're not doing it quite right, and then all of a sudden you think, yeah, I can see that. And you can easily spot the difference between somebody who's at pro level, somebody who's at amateur level. But when you're at pro level, you can see there are differences between somebody who's still at the elite or putting in an elite performance and somebody who's putting in a subpar performance. And you can see the difference. It's as clear as day. But that doesn't mean that the person who's putting a subpar performance is quote unquote rubbish, they might have played rubbish, but in terms of their quality overall, they still are way above what you and I are, right? But they're just not the same level as the other elite, players or fighters or whatever on the same pitch in the same ring at that current moment in time. It doesn't mean that they're rubbish and they should never play the game again or whatever. They should never fight again in certain respects. It's just that they've reached a level, and that's what it is. It's just like the same thing when they're talking about AJ right now, Anthony Joshua. He lost a couple of fights against Usyk, and they say, oh, he's terrible, he's rubbish. No, he's not. He's still a fantastic fighter. He's still a very dangerous fighter. But he reached a level where he just could not beat this one fighter. And you say, well, okay, well, you could say this about. I remember having a conversation with somebody years ago talking about tennis, right? And talking about tennis, and that an old British tennis player, he's not that old now, but he's retired now, of course. Tim Henman, right? They were saying, he was saying, he's rubbish. He's never got to a final. I think he only got to one final. I think. He's rubbish. He's never won anything. I said, hold on a minute. Tim Henman was a great professional. He earned millions in the sport. He did fantastic, such a high standard. Whilst he never won anything, he's still elite level. And he was there or thereabouts, and he got very close to the the big Grand Slam championships a couple of times. So he's still at an exceptionally high level. Whilst he didn't win anything, he won a few tournaments here and there. He's still at that level. So I think people misconstrue, winning medals, winning titles, winning whatever, and still all winning bouts or winning matches and being at a certain lower level or so, or whatever it is, But there we go. Listen, so this is my thoughts of the weekend. In terms of fighting, I was really paying attention to the football, of course, all the scores in the football. I was paying attention to the World Superbikes going on in Australia as well. 2 wins for Bautista there, great performances there as well. Ducati once again doing great stuff as well. But as I say, the real thing was for football, obviously first of all, and then for the boxing. I thought, and the story and the conversation keeps on going on about the boxing. Or about this, these fighters and the influence of fighting or influence of boxing and all that sort of stuff. But it's not. I think the boxing world definitely needs to improve, and it needs to get the likes of all the promoters, the boxing promoters. They probably need to find a way to get more fights on, bigger fights on. The problem with boxing is that the modern boxing, and you see this with the Tyson Fury fights in particular, is that they're just so difficult to get negotiated. There's always something. They always want something more, whichever side it is. Somebody thinks they deserve more. And, it's all about the money and where the money's going to go. And whilst I appreciate that, what's happening is the boxing fans are missing out on great fights. In the last couple of years, we could have had 6 or 7, 8 fights, 10 fights between, the likes of Fury, Usyk, AJ, Wilder, Joyce, whoever, Chisora, White. In terms of heavyweights. Okay, you could have had everybody fighting each other. It could have been great. Load, fights. Every other month, let's say, or every month. There's a big, a big title fight here, big title fight there, and that's probably what they need to aim at. They need to aim at every month having a world championship card somewhere. Doesn't matter which council it's with, but having a world title fight, heavyweight or multiple world title fights, and then in between they have boxing nights on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever, just on boxing channels, TV channels, whatever, like Box Nation or whatever it is, and that's what they need to do. The TV companies probably need to get in on this a lot more, because what will happen is that the YouTubers, whatever, they're going to take away all the money. The money is going to drift off into that area, that influencer boxing, because at the end of the day, if it's a business and your crowd, all they want is to watch that. They don't want to watch pro boxing because they find it's boring, because they're not interested in whoever's fighting. They're interested in the people who are fighting, which are YouTubers, let's say. Then that's the problem. The problem is the money is going to start draining out of the pro boxing world into influencer boxing, and there'll be no way of stopping it. That's the problem. There'll be no way of stopping it. But anyway, listen, you're watching this later. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your thoughts on that. Let us know your thoughts of anything that I've said. I say, I'm not an authority. I'm just telling you like it is. I'm telling you and giving my opinions of what I thought. I thought it was a good, entertaining fight. I think they're always good, entertaining fights for the most part. I think there's some up and coming prospects look decent. I think just like a lot of these cards, boxing cards, some are all right, some are not great. I thought the co-main event was the jewel in the fight. It's good quality. That was a great world championship. Badou Jack, three weight world champion he has become. So he's now world champion against WBC. Great, fantastic, amazing. He gets walked out. But Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson, is walking him out, walking alongside him. How good must that feel? How great must that feel? And I had a feeling as soon as sort of walking out, he just looked good. He looked, great. But there we go. I thought that was the fight. Jake Paul and Tommy Fury, yeah, it was a fight. It was kind of entertainment, but the quality wasn't there. That's it. And I think if you want the quality, as I've said right throughout this live stream, he's got to work on. They've both got to work on their weaknesses a lot, and also, their strengths also. But they've just got to get better. And the only way they get better is more pro fights with other fighters who are just that little bit better than they are. Because if they go, because right now these two are pretty much the same level. Let's say, doesn't matter if Tommy Fury's beaten him, because he's not blasted him away in the first round. If he'd blasted him away in the first round, you could say Tommy Fury is levels above him, but he's not. He didn't do that, so therefore you can't say, there's no proof there to say that he is levels above him. But he beat him, and he won. So therefore, he's won. But for them to improve as boxers, it's just like they have to start. If they just fight each other, that's not them improving. That's just them fighting each other. They need to fight other people to improve, to find strengths and weaknesses in other fighters. They need to go distance in other fights as well. And maybe even lose a fight or two, just to see where they are and see how they can improve. Jake Paul's now lost the fight. He's probably, in my eyes, in a much better position to improve more than Tommy Fury would for the next fight. And I would not be surprised if Jake Paul wins that fight. I would not be surprised, because now we know. Now the whole event was called The Truth, and people were remarking left and right, who's going to be the better fighter? Who's going to win? Well, we found out that neither was that great, but But we should have expected that. We should have known that. Neither were that great. They kind of went in there. They gave it their all. It was an entertaining fight. But they now know that they need to definitely improve to get better. And I think with that loss, it's probably gonna give Jake Paul that push to get better. Will it give Tommy Fury that push? Don't know. It really depends, obviously, what happens in the future. Now, over the next couple of weeks, I'm sure they're all going to sit down and start talking about it a little bit more. I'm sure that, it depends which way Jake Paul goes. If he's going to carry on with the boxing, if he's going to go after other people, has it scuppered the plans of him to go after other people? I think it has, because what's happened now is that Jake Paul was supposed to go and fight a couple of MMA fighters, Nate Diaz. Maybe it was gearing up for a KSI fight at the end of the year. But now you've got a situation where actually he needs to fight Jake Paul. He needs to fight Tommy Fury again to put that to bed. So it's not necessarily going to make him a better fighter, but it's something hanging over him. Do you know what I mean? Met in both legs. Hello there. Cheers, Alf. Come on, you eyes. Come on, you eyes. Absolutely. But there we go. Hey, if you're watching this later, let us know. Let us know your thoughts. As every man and his dog is going to have an opinion about this, and hopefully I've tried to dissect it as best as I can and tell you what I think in terms, not necessarily the technical boxing, which you don't need me to tell you what it was. You go and watch it yourself. You can make your own mind up there. But I'm just talking in terms about where do they go now? What do they do now? What does it mean for the boxing world, for the influencer boxing world, for their own careers, their own levels, their own expertise? What do they have to do in that kind of sense? And I think, as I said before, the only one out of the Fury family for me that spoke the most level-headed about it was the older brother, Shane Fury. He was kind of more level-headed about everybody else. Everybody else is kind of very much like, yeah, bravo, bravado. Whereas I think he was more level-headed about the whole thing. And look, they come away with a win. They've got to be very proud of that. They've got to be very proud of the win. He's still unbeaten, Tommy Fury. This is great. And, if it wasn't such a big fight in terms of a high-profile fight, if it wasn't, had all this pressure, all this media attention, and he'd just gone to a local town hall somewhere, and he got that result, split decision, you'd be like, great, that's 8 rounds in the tank. You learnt a lot from it. You've got lots of weaknesses there. You need to improve in your movement, in your shot accuracy, and your combinations, and all this sort of stuff. But your jab worked well. Your first 4 rounds you did great. You hit your some great body shots and everything. You took a few great shots. So so there's you can do the positives and the negatives. But you could say you've got 8 rounds in the bank there, 8 rounds in the bank, and you've got the win. So your record keeps on going up. But so if it was a town hall fight, it would have been great. It probably would have been paid a grand, let's say, or a few £100 here and there, whatever it is. But your record would have just been better, so much better on paper, rather than fighting Jake Paul and all this high profile, and you're being exposed a little bit more. Everybody knows what the fight was. Where if it was just a record that you got in a town hall fight somewhere, on some undercard somewhere, that the eyes of the world weren't on you, then all of a sudden you just walk away saying, I got the win, I'm still 9-0. Whereas now you're 9-0, but people think, oh, hold on a minute. Every man and his dog saying, oh, hold on a minute, I think Jake Paul actually won that fight. I think there's still too many questions, you know what I mean? But if you'd gone in to that fight and you busted him up in the first round, there would have been no question. There would have been no answers. Nothing to answer. Whereas now, I think you still got stuff to answer. That's the problem. Anyway, guys, listen. I think it's time. I think it's time that I called it an evening. But I've got things to do. I've got things to do. You know how it goes. And I've got a few more projects coming out this week. To say, but. If you're watching this later, thanks for watching. Thanks for getting into the chat there, both of you there. As I said, but I wasn't expecting many people for the chat, especially because I'm not talking about motorcycles, right? On this radio podcast thing, but it's all about sports. But look, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy just to sit here and talk about stuff that I really want to talk about, and hopefully you're into that as well. But as I say, it's still, this is going to be on, let's have a look. I didn't even see what's on Twitch there. Yeah, so it's still being shown on Twitch. It's going on YouTube as well, so that's all good as well. But let us know your thoughts on anything. Right, anyway, I'm going to leave it there, but as I say, it's been emotional, as is always the case. And I'll catch you again. Ta-ra.